Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday night, and we are so excited because we've got a special guest calling in from Singapore. The famous, or should I, not infamous, but famous Dr. J. Frederick Templeman, MD. And Collie and Eddie and I know Dr. Templeman, my goodness, I guess 9 years. And November the 4th was our 9-year anniversary in working together with Dr. Templeman, and he's become just a dear friend as well as a colleague that we know. It is just spectacular in the field of alternative health. Dr. Templeman is a primary care physician, board certified both in the United States as well as Canada, and has over 20 years of clinical experience. He entered medical school at the age of 36, but previous to that had an extraordinarily successful career in the Canadian Diplomatic Corps, during which he was posted in third world countries, which gave him his passion for that part of the world. And since becoming a physician, Dr. Templeman has led groups so many times of students as well as medical volunteers back to those areas where he was previously posted. Dr. Templeman is an avid writer, not only on mangosteen, where I believe he's probably perceived as the world's expert on mangosteen as a food supplement, but he also writes medical fiction, and I did not know that till recently. Dr. Templeman is board certified with several research companies, and he's very active in the field of natural products. And he truly believes that excellence in research and in the production of products is essential, if not critical, if botanicals are going to be accepted as nutritional interventions along with standard medicine, which is what I refer to and I believe is referred to as complementary and integrative medicine. He's a pioneering advocate for nutritional intervention in standard medical care and has literally lectured worldwide to tens of thousands of people. And tonight, Dr. Templeman is going to be talking about a severe problem here in America. And I can so relate to this. Now, my husband cannot because Eddie weighs the exact same thing. His weight is the same as when I met him when he was 17 years old. In comparison to me that has struggled with weight. So any diet that has ever been on the market, I've done. And with some had success, but inevitably gained it back with more. And over the last 10 years, and I hate to admit this, but once I passed 60, no matter how hard I work at the gym, no matter how hard I limit my caloric intake, the cravings for the sugar and the sweets and the carbs are still there, and the needle never moves to the left. It's always moving to the right. And Dr. Templeman is going to now talk to us about the last weight loss program anyone will ever have to be on. So I'm going to mute myself out and turn it over to you, Dr. Templeman. Welcome.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Collie. Well, guys, I've had the question many times already, what makes what Zango is doing with FAVAO different than the other products that are out there, the other programs that are out there? Well, I think it's really that Zango is prepared to tell the truth about what is necessary to do in order to have weight loss, because virtually every product or management system out there is either prepared to tell lies or to shade the truth, or they have flaws in them. And Zango has prepared a system that is designed to support every aspect of weight management. And they respect the basic principle that diet plus exercise, and I think I might like to put activity in there in the place of exercise, plus supplements is the way that you get to optimal health. That's always been true. It's still true. And we're going to be talking about body mass index. You'll hear me mention it many times. It's less than a perfect way of deciding whether a person is overweight or obese because it doesn't have an age regulation, an age factor in it. Nonetheless, it's about the best thing that's out there, and everybody listening should know what their body mass index is. 25 to 29.9 is overweight, and obesity is a BMI of 30 or greater. And in the North American society, we have approximately 66% of our population, and sometimes I've seen the figure 70 used, who are either overweight or obese. So I'm going to talk to you just for a couple of moments about the history of this. Back in the 1980s, everybody wasn't even paying attention to body mass index. This is a map of the U.S. that shows that only 21 states, for example, were even mapping or following this. But those that were following it were seeing something that had come out of the late 70s and beginning of the 80s, which was the slow fattening of America. So they had a number of states that were already from the 15 to 19% of their population was obese, and they had a number who were from 10 to 14. Now, look forward 5 years, and you see that only 5 states are no longer or have not started to check their population's BMIs, but those that have found that out of the gate, they've got people who are more than 10% obese percentage-wise in their population. You now go to 1995, and now everybody's on board, and everybody is getting heavier. So that we've moved from 15 to 19%, from 10 to 14% in a good proportion of the states. And then when you look at 2000, you can see that those same states that were already heavy have moved to 20 to 24%, and it's only lonely little Denver and the surrounding areas of Colorado that have not gotten beyond 10 to 14, but they've moved to where the rest of the states were a long time ago. And this process continues. In 2005, we now have 25 to 29% of many states that are overweight. We have 3 states that are greater than 30% of their population, which is obese, and we have a large number at almost a quarter of their population being obese. And here we are in 2010, and it's getting worse. And the strange thing about this is that it's been about a decade now that we've had formal programs on television, entertainment, reality shows about losing weight. We can't pick up a newspaper. You can't turn on a TV program. You cannot listen to the radio without hearing something about obesity. The First Lady has talked about school lunches, etc. And a number of interventions have begun. Like I said, a $70 billion industry, but we are getting heavier. And that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And when you look at something, you realize, you look at this, you realize that the problem is so immense that obesity has become the new tobacco. In fact, you could almost look at it and say that today obesity is driving the cost in the healthcare sector of our GNP about the same way that that tobacco and alcohol drove it in the past. We still have problems with alcohol, but tobacco, thank goodness, is not the driving force that it was. And here's a very good study. When you're looking at studies, you want to find out, one, how many people were in it, because the larger the number of people, the more valid the results. And you also want, if
nothing yet.
Whoever it is, if you could mute, I guess that's Peter in Canada, isn't it? If you could mute yourself out, it would be helpful. And so you look at not only how many people were in the study, but you look at how many years the study ran. And so here you see that they have
You are now unmuted. You are now muted.
Obese men and women that they looked at for 12 to 20 years, and they came to a couple of conclusions. One was that processed foods, or things which we will call later on in the literature palatable foods, such as potato chips, potatoes, sugar-sweetened beverages, processed meats, etc., were associated with the largest weight gain, and the smallest weight gain was associated with vegetables, whole grains, fruits, nuts, and yogurt. But that's not anything you haven't heard a dozen times. But here's the important point of this study. Food choice had a much greater impact on weight gain than activity. And I want you to remember that. If you go to the gym, you will get strong, but you will not lose weight. You need to do about 120 minutes a day of aerobic exercise if you're going to count on exercise expenditure of calories as being the major contributor to your weight management. And that's not a practical thing to do, and I'm not even convinced that it's a healthy thing to do. Some people do it. We recognize that, but not what I would recommend. So why has the body mass index gone up so dramatically in the last 35 years? Well, we've learned that it's fats and sugars in combination, rather than just the number of calories per se, that accounted for the increases in the body mass index. And here's the picture of malnutrition in the U.S. There's a young lad, 15 years of age. He weighs 381 pounds. His blood pressure is way up there. He should be on meds. He's got total cholesterol, which is 100 points or more, greater than what we would accept in our very generous estimate of 200 being the top of normal. Triglycerides are sky high. His HDL, which is the good cholesterol, is below normal. His LDL is unable to estimate because on the tube of blood, there's a little clot on the top that looks just like cream. It is, in fact, the LDL, and we couldn't even measure it. In the hemoglobin A1C, which is a measurement of how much sugar he carries around in his body on average for the last 90 to 120 days, he's on the border of diabetes. Now, when I started practicing a number of years ago, if I saw one person over 300 pounds a week or every 2 weeks, that was normal. Now, when I stopped practicing 5 years ago in Georgia, I was seeing someone almost every day, and sometimes several people a day, who were over 381 pounds. I had people who came into my office in these little scooters.
He said he had people coming to his office that were 381 pounds.
Well, yeah, I did.
You are now unmuted. You are now muted.
Haven't done so already, because that's coming through. Thank you. So we had just dozens and dozens of people coming in on a monthly basis to our practice who were having major problems. And as I suggested, people who were in their 40s coming in little carts because they were already beginning to wear out the joints in their hips, knees, and ankles. I hadn't seen that before. That is frightening for a doctor. And I imagine it's kind of frightening for the people in the chairs. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because this is not a scare campaign. But I want you to be aware that high blood pressure, arthritis, cholesterol problems, type 2 diabetes, stroke, coronary heart disease, gallbladder disease, sleep apnea, breathing problems, and then, of course, cancer at a 34% increased cancer risk if you are obese. That's scary. And the bad eating habits in our society start early, and they continue on when we go to a restaurant, and virtually any restaurant in America will give you twice the food that you should eat. There was an excellent book called In Defense of Food that I'd recommend if people are readers, that he said in there at a certain point, I'm going to misquote him, but I'll get as close as I can, that we need to eat real food, we need to eat less of it, and we need to eat things that are primarily from plants. That's excellent advice, and we'll talk about how and when to eat in a few minutes. But I'm going to talk to you now about something that really is the only explanation for me about why we continue to put on the pounds despite the fact that we know that it is not good for us, despite the fact that we know we should not do it, and that is dopamine. Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter. That means it's a chemical in the brain made by the body that passes information from one brain cell to another. It's part of the neurotransmitter system. But it's specifically important in what we're talking about here because it is associated with the reward system of the brain. And that means that it provides feelings of enjoyment and reinforcement, so that when you do something that gives you a dopamine surge, it is likely that you will seek to do that again.
You are now unmuted. You are now muted.
And it rewards experiences such as food, sex, drugs, and it even strengthens neutral stimuli that become associated with food, sex, and drugs. Now, we've heard about food, sex, and drugs before, but we haven't talked about drugs. We've only talked about sex for a while, but we don't talk much about food as an addiction. But the truth is, and it's something that you need to understand, it really is an addiction, people. It's not just like an addiction, but it's real addiction, pure and simple. And if you start to treat it as anything else, you're not going to put the kind of effort and attention and time into looking after it or controlling it that will be necessary for success. It's an addiction. I want to go back to this picture. This is a picture of a fellow that many of you may recognize. He is like most of us. In other words, when you look at his high school picture, it is normal weight. But the fattening of America has been going on for 35 odd years. And this gentleman has gone through the same process. Now, when you recognize him, those who know him will know that he's a very, very successful businessman, and that he has succeeded not in one business, but in many different businesses. And you can't do that if you are weak-willed. And that's what I want to make you understand, or to help you understand. Being overweight is not simply a question of will. It is a problem of addiction. And this man, who is a good friend of mine, he backed into addiction without recognizing what it was, just like all of us. And now I'm calling you to attention and saying it is addiction. It's real. It's not just like addiction, but it is real addiction. And we're going to look at some scientific studies that help us to understand that. Now, by the way, those of you who are readers, go to PubMed if you wish and type in the search phrase food addiction. I was in there the other day. I saw that there were 1,175 studies about food addiction. We're not talking about it yet, quite like we talk about alcohol or drugs or sex addiction, but we will be very, very shortly. And it's time for you to understand that you do need to think about it as an addiction. Otherwise, you're not going to successfully overcome it. So, reward and addiction. What does dopamine do and what doesn't it do? Well, here's a study. This was from quite some time ago, 2006. So this information has been around for a while. But it says that addictive drugs share with palatable foods. Now, palatable foods simply mean those things which taste good and which have good mouth feel. And the doggone processed food industry is very, very capable at taking real food and processing it into something that resembles food but has tremendous taste and good mouth smell, or good mouth feel. And so these foods have the property of increasing the dopamine we talked about. And what does that do? Well, it results in impairments in impulse control and decision making that form the basis for the compulsive feature of drug seeking and its relapsing behavior. So, I mean, it's there. We know about it. And we've got many things that now prove it more clearly. Here's the Duke Medical Health News from recently in July. It says neural, or meaning brain activity, in certain regions of the brain indicates that food addiction can be as strong as drug or alcohol dependence. And then here's another one showing that when you do the mapping of activity in the brain that can be done with the positron emission tomography, which measures the uptake of energy in cells so that you know what part of the body is working, you can see that there's an overlap in the patterns that are involved in obesity and addiction. These results suggest that both obese and drug-addicted individuals suffer from impairments in dopamine pathways that regulate neuronal systems associated not only with reward sensitivity and incentive motivation, but also with other areas like memory, learning, impulse control, stress, activity, etc. Here's another one. Obesity and brain responses to palatable foods. Obesity is associated with an abnormal brain response in the sensory aspect. That means in the what we call the taste area of the brain. I'm just going to get rid of that little thing. I don't know where it came from. Oh, that wasn't cool. Okay. That can only partially be explained by the high sugar that is in the blood and by the high level of disinhibition which characterize obese individuals. When they say disinhibition, remember I was talking to you. By the way, if you haven't muted yourself actively by hitting star 6, please do that right now. Hit star 6 if you haven't done it before. Star 6. Thank you very much. There's still people out there who haven't hit star 6. Please hit star 6 because it is making it very hard to hear. Star 6 if you haven't done it. Thank you. Now, this is neuroimaging, so it's looking at the uptake of energy in the brain, and that way you can tell which part of the brain is actually working when you take in food, for example. And there was a study that I read that was interesting, and I'm going to distort a little bit of it, certainly in accounting for it. But if you haven't muted star 6, please mute star 6 right now. There's a lot of background noise. Hit star 6 if you haven't already hit star 6. If you have and you hit it again, it will open it up again. But please hit star 6 if you haven't. And I'm trying to remember where I was. Oh, so you can look at the images on these PET scans and you can tell which part of the brain is there. And they did a study. They gave some obese ladies a particularly tasteful milkshake. And then 6 months later, after these people had acquired a taste for this milkshake, they brought them back in and imaged them again, and this time, in order to get the same amount of activity in the brain in the areas of reward, they had to give more than one milkshake. And that's called something which is called tachyphylaxis, because it means that it's not on only on a gross level in the brain, but it means that at a cellular and a molecular level, there are mechanisms in obesity and drug addiction that are actually different in the brain. And this one reads that recent reports suggest that excessive consumption of food or drugs of abuse induces similar neuroadaptive responses in brain reward circuitries. Now, I've written in the bottom there, tachyphylaxis or receptor upregulation. Many of you will understand what that means. But for those of you who need it in lay terms, it simply means you need more to get the same kick. So if you needed one milkshake and you like the milkshake and you've been drinking the milkshakes, you're going to have more than one, probably several, to get the same kind of kick as you did before. So it means that you take in more calories in order to get the same feeling, in order to feed, and you feed the obesity. Now, the other day, I saw a very frightening little clip on YouTube. It showed individuals, in this one case,
you are now unmuted.
An individual who was over 800 pounds.
You are now muted.
Absolutely no limit on the top to what obesity can get to. And he was eating literally non-stop. Every minute of the day, he was trying to get something into his mouth. His body was so huge that his lungs could not continue to provide oxygen without him having pure oxygen in his nose in a nasal cannula on a 24-hour-a-day basis. So there is no upward end. It can go forever. And we need to be attentive to where we are on the scale. Now, I've always known, I got into an argument with somebody who was thin and trim, had been thin and trim since I'd known him for a long time. In fact, this guy is a triathlete. And we fought because he thought that he thought like me. He thought that his brain worked like my brain. And I told him, fat people's brains don't work the same as your brain. They don't think about food the way you think about food. They don't think about exercise the way that you think about exercise. And I didn't have anything to prove it at the time, but since then, we've seen that there are differential brain responses to satiation, in other words, the signal to stop eating, in both obese and lean men. The brain responses to a meal in the prefrontal areas, this is associated with inappropriate response tendencies, that's the prefrontal area, and in the other areas commonly associated with the regulation of emotion that are different in obese and in lean men. It works in women too. This study showed that satiation, meaning getting enough to feel like you've had enough, elicits differential brain responses in lean and obese women. Our brains don't react the same. And I'd go so far as to say that we don't think about food or activity, for that matter, in the same way. Now, here's one that suggested that there is a delayed satiety response. In other words, that when somebody is obese and they eat, normally the body would send signals to the brain saying, that's enough. But in obese individuals, this is a feedback system or several feedback systems that are interfered with by chemical messengers from abdominal fat, intra-abdominal fat. So that belly fat actually sends out signals which
You are now unmuted.
helpful signals telling you when
You are now muted.
to stop eating. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about an eating disorder here that is not well known, but it's far more common, for example, than bulimia or anorexia nervosa, and most of us have heard of them. But binge eating disorder, or BED, shares many characteristics with addictive behavior. Among them, diminished control and continued use despite negative consequences. And I don't know about you, but I went back to medical school. Let me tell you about the parts of my life that I'm proud of. The toughest thing I've ever done has been to stay a husband for 40 some odd years and to be a father for 10 children. Toughest things I've ever done. But I'm proud of the fact that I did them. I went back to medical school when I was 36. Most people were much younger. Their brains were more limber than mine were. But I went back and I succeeded. I graduated and I became a doctor. By the way, that reminds me of the old joke. How can you tell which guy graduated last in his medical class? What do you call him? And the answer is you call him doctor, and you don't know. But anyway, I have done things that have been hard. People have thought that they were difficult, just like the fellow in the picture. Very successful in many aspects of his life. And I, like he, have this tremendous weakness. Now, pecan pie is one of my weaknesses. And if it's nighttime and nobody's around, I don't do this in public. I mean, I'm not ridiculous. But if there's nobody around and I'm watching television, it's late at night and everybody's in bed, and there's a pecan pie in the fridge, it's quite likely that I will leave nothing but a token sliver of that pie before I go to bed. And it isn't because I'm trying to not eat it. I'm trying to save myself from the guilt trip about eating the whole pecan pie and pretending that it just disappeared. We had a birthday party at our house the other night for a bunch of kids and my grandkids, and somebody brought one of those filthy chocolate cakes from Costco. They have probably more chocolate in them per square inch than anything I've ever eaten, and I love it. I just love it. And they left part of it, and it was under this plastic thing, and I said to my wife before we went to bed, would you please throw that out? And she said, no, the kids will eat it when they come back. And I said, I'm not worried about the kids. I'm worried about me getting up at night and eating that chocolate cake. She said, well, you can have a piece. I said, no, you don't know me. I wouldn't have a piece. This is what I do in the dark. I eat the whole damn cake, and I don't want it around. And so she went up to the room shaking her head as if I'd made an unreasonable request. And so I gave the cake to her dog. I didn't know that chocolate was not good for dogs. I should have figured that out, but I didn't know. So we had a bit of a crisis about that. Nonetheless, get rid of things that are temptations to you. I got rid of the chocolate cake, but it didn't stop me. Now, look at fast food and addiction. Evidence suggests that the high fat and salt content of fast food may increase addictive potential. And I put intra-abdominal in there because that's the kind of obesity that is characterized by resistance to insulin, that's diabetes, by resistance to leptin, that's something that your body produces after you've eaten enough and it sends it to the brain to say, stop eating, and ghrelin, another one of the same sort of messengers, and other hormonal signals that would normally control appetite and limit reward. And it said that not only the food itself, but fast food advertisements, restaurants, menus, they all provide environmental clues that may trigger addictive overeating. And you notice that I put down in there cephalic response. A couple of years ago, the New England Journal of Medicine put out a study from the Framingham study. That's a very valid study. It's been going on for decades now. But they showed an association, a very strong association, between something called the metabolic syndrome, which is abdominal obesity, hypertension, and poor blood sugar problems, getting close to diabetes or being diabetic, and problems with cholesterol. They showed an association between that syndrome, the metabolic syndrome, and people who drank 2 sodas a day. Now here's the key point, and the thing that didn't make sense to the majority of people who heard this. It didn't matter if it was a diabetic a Diet Coke or whether it was a full sugar Coke. It didn't make any difference. They were diabetic candidates. They had the metabolic syndrome. They got just as problematic as people who were drinking sugar Cokes. And the reason for it was the cephalic response, because, ladies and gentlemen, when you smell food, when you look at it, when you get close to it, and your mouth waters, you are living proof. Or when you take a diabetic Coke into your mouth, your body is going to react exactly as if that were food, and it will crank out the juices. We say, our mouth waters. That made my mouth water. Well, what do you think your mouth's watering for? It's waiting for food. And it's making you hungry because your insulin is going to spike as if you had eaten. So there's a problem with that. We'll talk about the insulin response in a few moments. We're going to talk now about breaking your food addiction, because that's what we're all here to hear about. You need to establish your support system, because believe me, gentlemen and ladies, if you think you can do this on your own, you're absolutely wrong. You're wrong. It's an unusual, extraordinarily unusual situation for somebody to be able to suddenly and completely just kick an addiction. You don't do it. You need a support system, and you need an intimate support system, in the sense that you need a mentor or a partner. If you're going to indulge in dangerous activities such as eating palatable foods or diving under the water, you need a buddy. You need somebody to help you so that you are going to remain safe. Then you need a wider system of support. And this can be a group, whether it's Facebook, XConnect, FAVAO.com, the 500K plan, etc. You need to belong to that community, which is larger than you. And why? Not only for support, but because they are the ones that you are going to commit to. You're going to tell everybody that matters to you that you have decided to manage your weight. You're going to lose weight. And you're going to tell them how long it's going to take you. And you're going to commit. And why are you bothering to commit to them? Well, we lie to ourselves. And we do it so often that, in fact, it doesn't even feel bad in many cases. But we don't, generally speaking, lie to the people around us who matter. And so when you tell them that you are going to do something, it's going to strengthen your resolve to do it. I could tell you a story about how I made a lot of money as a doctor having people quit smoking through a trick, but that's not for today. And finally, you need an attachment to a higher power, because this thing sometimes requires superhuman assistance. It's not easy. And anybody who tells you that it is lying. And anybody who's overweight and who has tried to manage their weight unsuccessfully knows that it isn't easy. And if they're smart, they won't believe the lies. Now, you need to commit to quit. You need to do this in that little booklet that you're going to get. It has a page where you're going to put your reasons in there. And you're going to set your goals. There's going to be a timeline in there. There's going to be an amount of weight that you're going to go. And then finally, you're going to announce your intention. And whether you do it on Facebook for FAVAO 500K or how you decide to do it, doesn't really matter as long as you are telling as many people as possible what you are going to do and telling them when you're going to do it, and then you're going to promise that you will do it, because that's what's necessary to succeed. And I'd love to see everybody around the country doing this on New Year's Eve, when it's a time when we make these resolutions anyway. I'd love to see just hundreds of thousands of people pushing buttons on their handhelds to announce their intentions to everybody who matters to them in the world. And once you do that, once you've made your commitment, then you have to set rules for your behavior. You're going to decide how you're going to eat. That's what the program of Zango has out there teaches you. It teaches you that you need to, in order to overcome insulin problems, you need to eat up to 6 times a day. Now, I know most of you say, well, 6 times a day. I can possibly eat 6 times a day. Well, let me tell you, every one of you eats 6 times a day. The average person touches their face 5 times every minute. And you can believe that a lot of those times they're not missing the mouth. And they may not have what they call a meal in their hand, but they're going to put something in their mouth. They will eat at least 6 times a day. And this is asking you to make that official. It's asking you to eat appropriate foods, and it's asking you to eat them in quantities that aren't going to be poisonous. So you need to get ready to eat properly. You need to avoid temptation. If you're an alcoholic, you don't spend your time in bars. If you're a sex addict, you don't go to strip clubs or the internet to look at porn. If you are a food addict, and most of us are, unfortunately,
you are now unmuted. You are now muted.
Then you don't cover yourself you don't go into fast food joints. You just don't go there anymore. That's not a place where you go. And then you need to prepare for relapses. Now, I know that sounds self-defeating, and you won't hear the same message from Dr. Talbot, because he's a much different guy than I am. Or you won't hear the same message from Dr. Morton, because he's a thin person. And you won't hear the same kind of message from the people who are going to be teaching you about the program, because they're going to tell you, no cheating, no cheating, but I'm going to say to you, get ready. You're going to cheat. If you are human and you've been trying to lose weight in the past, you know you're going to cheat. And so you have to get ready for the relapse. You have to expect it. You need to limit it time-wise and the amount of food that you're going to put in. And then you need to get your script ready. And by getting your script ready, what I mean is this. If you are like me and you have gone on these binge-eating things, whether it's a whole pie or whether it's something that is more like French fries up to your eyeballs, whatever it's been, if you've done that and then afterwards become reflective, you will know that the majority of us beat ourselves up. We say things like, what in the world were you thinking about? How could you be such a slob? And we say these things, and if somebody else were to say them to us, we punch them. But we say it to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. And let me tell you that you can't beat yourself up and do damage to your self-esteem and to your view of yourself, your self-image, and be successful. You need to say, yeah, I'm eating this cake, but I'm going to stop right here. And I'm not going to eat beyond 5 o'clock. I'm going to limit this time.
You are now unmuted. You are now muted.
And look at what I did. I had a week. I had 7, I had 9, I had 10 days where I followed the rules very well. And by the way, the rules that you're going to get about eating, you can modify those foods. What they're going to teach you to do is eat healthy foods. You're going to have to change the kinds of food that you eat on a regular basis. You'll have to change how often you eat. And believe me, let me tell you again, I'm convinced if you think you can do it without doing that, I don't think you can. And the results probably won't prove that you can. But get ready to be nice to yourself, to pat yourself on the back for your accomplishments, and when you fall off the wagon, get back on it. Now, you need to learn to substitute rewards to decrease eating temptations. In other words, institute an activity program, because activity, or exercise, if you want to call it that, is going to release dopamine. And there are many other healthful things that you can do that either distract or they rival dopamine release. Whenever you're feeling good doing something, whether you're a stamp collector or whatever, you're going to feel good. And there are things that you can choose to do instead of heading towards the food. Now, I don't know if your lifestyle allows it or if it's even practical, but if you could have a lot of sex and have a lot of orgasms, you'd have a very effective weapon against the kinds of feelings that you get from binge eating. And I think when you edit this, you wouldn't mind calling me to take that out. That's not a nice thing to say. But we want you to use the supplements because they're going to cleanse, they're going to build, and they're going to burn. And I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about this, but know that the Zango supplements are the best out there. In other words, they're not absolutely unique. Other people have proteins, but Zango went out and found a protein for vegetarians that was the best on the market. They found a protein for non-vegetarians that was the best on the market. They are out there. They've added stuff to the proteins that make them unique. In other words, nobody's going to have a protein quite like yours. And they have a cleansing element that they invented themselves that is different than anything else that's out there, although you can find similar products. And they have a fiber product, not something that you couldn't find out elsewhere, but a very, very good fiber product. And then the metabolic boost product really is a category created. There's nothing out there like it. I'm going to talk to you just for a minute or two about a couple of studies that we have that Zango has for this product that will be able to tell you just really how great it is. And then they have, you're going to have, well, first of all, let's go back to the number one. The cleanse is meant to clean out the GI tract and to support the detoxification function of the liver. That's the part of your body that takes everything that shouldn't be in there and conjugates it with something that will make it water soluble and gets it out of the body. And in addition to the little motility element called senna, which is there, by the way, in a much, much smaller amount than you would ever find it in a laxative on the shelf, but it's there nonetheless to give a little push. And you need to listen to your body to know exactly what it's telling you, because the normal human bowel habit can go from 3 to 4 times a day, that's normal, to once every 4 days, and that's still normal. But if you're on the right side of that equation, if you're over there in the once every 3 to 4 days, you should be able to use that cleanse virtually daily. But if you're on the other side, either get the depends out or adjust the amount of the cleanse element that you're taking and adjust how often you take it in order to be able to be active socially, because we're not prescribing diarrhea here. Diarrhea would be wrong. It's not something that you want to have on a regular basis. And this is not laxative abuse that is the point of what we're doing here. We want to clean the GI tract out regularly. We want to detoxify the things that are in the body by supporting the liver, and there are 4 elements that cleanse that support the liver. You want to give the gut the soluble fiber, because the soluble fiber is what is going to scoop up the cholesterol that's in the gut and hold on to it so it doesn't get absorbed. And then you have insoluble fiber, and that's what gives the form to the stool. That's what gives it its bulk. And since the GI tube is nothing really but a muscular tube from top to bottom, it needs something to work on. And then you get the metabolic boost twice a day. And here's the studies that I want to draw your attention to. The major element in this boost product is mangosteen. It's the big deal. And by the way, there's mangosteen in every one of the FAVAO products. But the mangosteen is the major element, and there's great science behind it in this metabolic boost. Now, there are certainly other things in there. There are things like chromium. There are things that will help you to feel a little bit better as you resist temptation. There are a number of elements, and I'm not going to go through them today here. I will at another time, or you can go and look them up on the FAVAO website. But what I am going to tell you about is that there were 2 studies where they had 60 obese people. They divided each study into 2. One half of the people in each study received a real thing, in this case the metabolic boost, and the others received a placebo. They all did the amount of activity that was prescribed. And that wasn't a great deal, by the way. That's why I call it activity and not exercise, because those people were to walk for 1/2 hour, 5 days out of 7. So that's very reasonable. That means virtually anybody could do it. And if you want to go into the gym and if you want to break a record, you can do that too, because the program accommodates for that as well. But these people walked for 1/2 hour, 5 times a week, and they ate a 2,000 calorie diet. Now, 2,000 calories is not starvation rations. And after 8 weeks, one group lost on average 12 pounds, the other group lost 11.4 pounds, and they both lost about 4 inches around the waist in 8 weeks, eating 2,000 calories a day and walking for 1/2 an hour, 5 days a week. So this really does work. And there was another study that was done informally by Zango, but they may have it available for you if you want to see it. It was done with a group of people inside the corporation. I believe there were 50 people, and it also proved that there is a difference. This stuff really does help the body to decide what to absorb and what to leave, and when it's burning energy or needing energy, it tells it preferentially to burn fat. For example, they did blood tests. They looked at HDL, they looked at cholesterol levels, for example, they looked at blood sugar, and they also looked at something called adiponectin. Now, adiponectin is a little chemical that is found in the blood when people are burning fat, preferentially. And in the people who were in the test groups that had the active ingredient, they had about 9 times as much adiponectin in their blood as those who were on the placebo. So it really did make a difference. And finally, we talk about the use of the protein supplements. When you do an ordinary diet out there, whatever it may be, you're going to lose 1/3 of the weight that you are going to lose will be lean body mass. And none of us, no matter what the age, can afford to lose lean body mass, because when you get older, it is a tough thing to create. And you need to be in the business of making certain that when you lose weight, you're not losing lean body mass as well. And so when you take on the task of weight management, and you're going to calorie restrict to a certain degree, and you're going to choose healthy foods in place of processed foods, you're going to have more healthy protein than you did before. Ergo, the Zango protein supplements. And each one of them has 13 grams of protein in it. So it's not a meal replacement. They're not making meal replacements. They are making protein supplements to be able to help you to conserve your lean body mass while you are managing your weight. And as I told you before, they've got one for vegetarians and they've got one for people who aren't. Now, last piece of advice, get sneaky. Learn the tricks that work for you, such as planned relapses or controlled cheating, and find out what it is that you need to do to personalize or individualize your weight loss program. And that means habits and things like I'm talking about here, but it can also mean, how do I tailor my meals to be something that I want to eat and that is still healthy for me? So there's lots, and how much activity am I going to engage in? Am I going to simply park my car the other way, or am I going to rule out elevators as a primary source of getting up and down, stay off escalators when I can walk the stairs? those are activity plans that matter. Now, I even forgot what I was saying. The insulin connection is the last point. The cephalic response, which I explained to you as being those kinds of things that come from the brain rather than from the mouth as far as food goes, and how it will crank up the body juices as if it were food, and that how this leads to the intake of high-carb foods in order to stifle craves. And because insulin is a metabolic growth factor, it is linked to heart disease because, amongst other things, it makes the plaque in arteries grow. That's why diabetics have 4 times the death rate from cardiac complications as normal people. And the link with cancer also matters because you've got something growing in your body that's not supposed to be growing, and you're going to crank up your growth factors like insulin to a high level. And believe me, you can do that, and you do it when you eat the way we've been eating in North America, because the true regulation of blood sugar swings is the only reliable way to control insulin variations. Really, truly, it's the only way. It's the way you break this addiction. That's why eating 6 times a day matters. Now, this is a lady who was in the gym 3 days a week. She was working out energetically in order to be able to lose weight. But she has gynecological fat. That's the fat that hangs around the waist on the outside, not like men. Men's on the inside. But gynecological fat, and in the legs and hips as well, she's got it. And you need to know, ladies, you can't exercise this fat away. It doesn't go away from exercise. It only goes away from changing what you are eating. And that's what she did. In 3 months, oops, let me go back. That's not cool. I apologize for this. Let me do something that proves that I'm not as inept as it looks. All right, there we go. Come on. So you can see the little pouch that she had at her belly, the kind of saddlebags, well, they weren't saddlebags, I guess they were saddle pockets, that she had at her hips. Those are gone. And that was 3 months of eating differently. So you need to exercise. It's important to be active, but you don't necessarily have to expect or should expect that you're going to put your body in the shape that you want it only by doing that. That's a minor thing compared to what you eat. And I think I'm finished. Sandy, can you come back on? Or Colleen, can you come back on? Sandy,
we are with you. We are with you. Oh, my goodness. And I so can relate to that because I've been a gym rat all my life.
You are now unmuted.
Dr. Templeman, and no matter how I work out
you
at
are now
the gym,
muted.
Nothing's changing till recently, till we started with the pre-launch of the CC4, and my body definition has changed dramatically. So I'm so excited that this month we can now order the full program. So we're going to be able to get the protein, we're going to be able to get the metabolic burn, and really start January 1 with our goals, whatever they may be, to look the way we want to look, feel the way we want to feel. And if Kali's there, I'm going to turn it back over to Kali as well. So, and I want to obviously thank everyone for their patience with bringing in Dr. Templeman from Singapore. I hope you feel, as I do, that it was well worth the wait. And thank you so much, Dr. Templeman, for everything that you do for the Zango Nation. We just appreciate you beyond words. Kali, are you with us?
Let me just say one thing. Zango has never had a shortage. They haven't had problems of running out. But I would suggest that people buy as much as they can, because I don't know that that's not going to happen. I mean, that's my prediction. I don't know whether I'm right. Certainly they've never told me that. But buy what you can.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. Just wanted to make sure, because I just called in on the phone to get the best audio connection. Dr. Templeman, thank you. That was absolutely amazing. And, you know, we've got people on the line from all over. I noticed there's even some people from Puerto Rico on Atlantic time, and we got lots of East Coast. And I know it's getting late. However, there's a lot of people that I'm sure would love to ask you a question. And so I want to let everyone know that there's a box that says Ask a Question. If you're looking at if you're online watching this presentation, it's just in the upper left-hand corner. It is different from the chat box. So I've noticed lots of you have been chatting in the chat box, which is great. I saw some questions in there too, but I would like the questions to be limited to the Ask a Question box. And Dr. Templeman said that he would stick around and answer them. I'm also going to stop recording this portion and start recording the question and answer period separately. So just so you know, and we'll just do that separate, and then this webinar will be made available tomorrow at the 500kplanblog.com. So just for a minute while people are getting their questions typed in the box, and for those of you who are on the East Coast and wanting to get to bed, you can type in your question. You don't have to wait for it to be answered. Know that it is being recorded and that you'll be able to get the answers to the questions regardless. So we don't want people waiting up until midnight or so to get their question answered if they have to work early in the morning. Now, I just want to do a few housekeeping things and show for those of you who are new, and this is the first webinar you've ever attended, that these are webinars that we do every Tuesday evening with a 500K plan. But these webinars are available to all people, whether you're a member of the 500K plan or not. And you can get information on everything that is available through the 500K plan, the webinars and events, at 500kplanblog.com. And that's what I have showing on the screen right now. So I wanted to show you a few things that are there. And again, other than the members only section, everything that is here is available for all of Zango Nation. Now, one of the things that we have is this box that says weekly webinars. If you click on that, you'll see all the webinars that are hosted for and by the 500K plan. And they're every Tuesday and Thursday night. Now, the Thursday night ones are 500K plan training, 500K plan specific, although they are still open for everyone, and they are done generically. The 500K plan is about skill building, and we're teaching people skill building skills, and we do it through a partnership that we have with Beatty Carmichael and Success Products. These Thursday night webinars are generic skill sets that he does for all clients, so they are not team specific, product specific, company specific. They're fantastic, and you're welcome to join any of them. However, if you're a member of the 500K plan, all of the training, there's like 96 hours of intensive. It's a master's degree in network marketing. It's all in your back office, so you don't have to worry about plugging into every single event that takes place. But the Tuesday night webinars, these are what we call guest-friendly webinars, and so they're webinars that are perfect to invite a guest, a non-Zango distributor to, and they'll be able to hear. And so welcome for all of those of you who are not Zango distributors yet, who've been invited by a Zango distributor. We hope that you've learned some really great information, and Dr. Templeman is just one of the many great experts that we have available to us as Zango distributors to help teach us about the various Zango products. And of course, we're very excited about FAVAO because it's brand new for all of us. Now, you'll see who we have next week. I am sharing a portion of my screen, so let me just get this. Here we go. And so next week we have Robin Webb. Now, Robin is the third member. We've already heard from the other two members on last week and the week before's Tuesday night webinars. And this week we have Robin Webb, who's the third member of the team. And Robin is the one whose photos that Dr. Templeman just showed you. So it was the FAVAO lifestyle program that changed her life. And of course now she is one of our, she's a lifestyle fitness and a success coach. And she'll be sharing a lot about the FAVAO support structure and the tools that are available to us as a community. Now, the other thing that I can show you is if you're on Facebook, if you go to facebook.com/500K plan, you'll see the 500K plan Facebook community. And if you just go there and click like us, then you'll be able to have access to the posts, and whenever we schedule a webinar, we post it on the blog, and it of course also will update the feed on the 500K Plan page of Facebook as well. And you're welcome to all of these. And again, you do not have to be a member to attend any of these. And then, of course, the last thing for those of you who are guests, I just want you to know that we do have a website. It's FAVAO.com. That will have a lot of great information about our products and about the system. And then, of course, there's how you can pre-order. And when you click on pre-order now, you'll see fantastic prices on the whole system. Phase 1, the first couple of products are being shipped now. I just got mine a few days ago. I know people are receiving them this week. Has the book that Dr. Templeman talked about. And, of course, there are also so much great information in there. And then towards the end of the month will be the rest of the FAVAO products will come out. And I encourage you also to get the subscription. When you have a subscription, you can log into FAVAO and have access to special videos, and there are meal planners, and there's all kinds of stuff, your shopping list to take with you, and how to, videos on preparing meals and all kinds of fantastic stuff. So that is what is available to you through the 500K Plan blog and through the, sorry, I can't multitask now. I used to be able to just speak and do 15 things at once, but now if I'm speaking, my brain just wants to focus on that one thing.